morning, everyone, and welcome to Stanislaus State Science Week. My name is Sanpreet Kaur.
And I'm Chelsea Flores. We're part of the Science Center community team here at Stan State.
Stanislaus State is pleased to provide the community with opportunities to learn by engaging in live activities and pre-recorded activities that will be shared throughout Zoom and Science Center community YouTube channel.
Before we start, please note that this event is going to be recorded and we'd like to ask for you to stay muted unless you're called upon. Additionally, please keep this activity, in order to keep this activity fun for all, please use the chat to answer questions or ask any questions. Thank you.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce our activity, Celebrate Earth Month with Dr. Koh.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Doing good? Okay, so let's get started. Okay, I own this innovative learning and design lab at Stanislaus State. And today I will briefly introduce myself and we will start our today's activity. So I'm Dr. Kyu Han Koh. I'm Associate Professor at SSU Stanislaus. I'm affiliated with the two departments because my PhD in two different majors. So I affiliated with Computer Science Department and also Cognitive Studies. And I'm usually interested into these research areas: artificial intelligence and computer science education and cognitive science. So today we will celebrate Earth Month. And what will we do today? Probably you already know, we will do Minecraft Education Edition. So it is Minecraft, but Education Edition, so there is no PvP, there is no Creeper, there is no Elder Dragon, but still it would be interesting. And today specifically, we will do Minecraft Education Edition, Climate Futures and Transportation. So we will learn about transportation, and we need to think about a couple of things. The first one is, what is transportation? Transportation, it can be like trucks, buses, cars, airplanes and ships, or boats, all the vessels. And also we need to think, why is transportation important? And also, how do you think transport can impact climate change? And how can we make transportation more sustainable? So we will go through Minecraft to learn about and to think about those questions. Okay, then let's get started. So here is Minecraft Education Edition. And I didn't try all these Stanislaus County, the school account, but I tried with Tulloch Unified School District account. So if you have your school account, and probably you will be able to access to this Minecraft Education Edition. And what you can do, if you go there, so there are like already there are many good walls or good toolkits. So if you go to subject kits, there is science, math, computer science, and also like art and design. And what we're gonna do the climate and sustainability. So I already imported our world. So I will go to the world to do something to learn about our the climate change and transportation. So I know everyone, not everyone, but many of you played Minecraft. So I'm gonna explore this world with you, just like playing Minecraft. So here is Emily, who will guide us our today's activity. So this is pretty similar to any other Minecraft world. So let's go to Emily and let's talk. So I know this screen is kind of small, so I'm gonna make it bigger. And I hope everyone can hear this board
Welcome to
well.
Climate Futures, Transportation. Today we'll learn about how transportation and the use of fossil fuels affects climate change. You'll have 3 areas to explore which will show you the many different impacts of transportation and fossil fuels. You could either stay together as a group or go off and explore on your own. Once we begin, you'll be given a camera which you can use to take pictures of what you find, as well as a portfolio to store and view your pictures. Each area will have a yellow time rift you'll need to enter to see an alternative view of the area. You must find all the time rifts before you can move to the next area. When everyone is logged in and ready to go, let me know by clicking on me again. Everyone will get a camera and you can start your adventure. Grab a book from behind me to see all the locations we need captured.
So here, what we need to do, go to this chest, open it, and put it in inventory. And if you here, so if we open this one, now, okay, let's see.
Looks like everyone's ready. Here's your camera. Don't forget to take a portfolio from the chest behind me.
So I already grabbed a book. So this one is all these like scrapbooks where we need to take photos. And we have a camera. And here is our portfolio. So we will capture the good ones where we will visit. So let's go to camera and let's get started. So we will start learning from all this age of oil, because oil is a energy source for our all transportations. So let's go to Emily and let's hear.
The age of oil started in the mid-19th century. In 1859, Edwin Drake invented the first modern drilling process for deep oil wells. It started the journey to nearly everything you see today. Cars, trucks, planes, factories, manufacturing of plastics, all of these need oil. However, even back then we were able to see the impacts drilling for oil and its use would have on the environment and on people.
So this is a drilling house. So let's take a photo of it. Then we will jump into this yellow rift. Oh, it is on fire, right? But still we need to take a photo. And let's go to Emily to ask what happened.
Edwin Drake's drill kept hitting groundwater, which was causing the walls of the well to collapse, mixing oil into the groundwater. Later that month it also caught fire, completely destroying the structure, causing them to rebuild.
Okay, now we need to go to next rift. So let's one. Okay, here is Emily again.
When John Davison Rockefeller created the Standard Oil Company in 1870, he started with a single operation in Cleveland, Ohio, USA. This was the first time the U.S. was able to mass-produce oil and opened the way for lots of new inventions that used oil as their fuel source.
Okay, so if we check our book, then also this is the place we need to take a photo. So grab a camera and take a photo of this. Okay, jump and jump. And so we will go to this rift. Okay, now we are in a different place. Let's go to Emily to ask where we are.
It didn't take long after that for him to start building bigger refineries and expanding out to other areas. This is the point in our history where CO2, carbon dioxide, emissions started to increase due to our activities. Up until now, the amount of CO2 in our atmosphere only varied due to natural changes on Earth, like increased volcanic activity. Once people started using oil in large amounts, we started releasing CO2 into the atmosphere at a rate never seen before.
So this is big refineries. And oil, the oil, it cannot be used as a fuel. It cannot be used for transportations like cars or airplanes, because it needs to go through like several processes to refine it. And Emily mentioned about this greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect is capturing heat, and it just makes atmosphere just like a greenhouse. So it increased the temperature like rise. So we can go to the next place. And there is one rift remaining. And we just explored about oils, and which will become gasoline, the fuel source for transportation. But let's ask Emily what actually started.
Availability of oil led to the creation of the internal combustion engine in Germany around 1876, which opened the way for Carl Benz to develop the first petrol-powered automobiles by 1878.
So don't forget to take a photo. And now we are going to this big auto factory and ask Emily.
Carl Benz then founded Benz & Company in 1883 to build stationary internal combustion engines. They then completed their first four-wheeled automobile in 1893 and the first of a series of racing cars in 1899.
So late 19th century, there already a vehicle, and people like people, they started building real cars. So now we completed one area, and we learned about oil and how we started having this vehicle, the cars. And now we are learning more about transportation, because we from the early 20th centuries, we started having more and more cars.
In 1914, Ford installed the first moving assembly line for mass production of an entire automobile. It took the time to build a single car down from more than 12 hours to 1 hour and 33 minutes. Because of this, Ford was able to mass-produce automobiles at a rate never seen before, and set the stage for lowering the price to something more people could afford. At this same time, we see the continued rise in CO2 emissions that began when we started burning oil at the end of the 1800s.
So as Emily explained, because all this automobile factory, we started having more vehicles, it means more CO2 emissions, and also it increased all this greenhouse effect. So here is, we can just explore this Ford company, like how they built all these vehicles. And unfortunately, you cannot interact with these people, but let's go to another one. Now we can see more vehicles nowadays. And ask Emily.
By the 1950s, cars became common. People were traveling more than ever before, and cars were the way they got there. At this time in the United States, there were around 40 million cars on the road. It is at this point we see a big rise in CO2 and other greenhouse gas emissions. By the late 1950s, atmospheric CO2 concentrations were higher than they had been in at least the last 800,000 years.
So now we start in the 1950s, we started having more cars and also more greenhouse gas emissions. And at the time, we started learning about smoke, and also we will learn more about smoke later. But the problem started when we started having more cars. And this is really common to see all vehicles, like big trucks or the small cars or SUV and vans all around our town, right? So ask Emily again.
The end of World War II brought a huge amount of economic and population growth. People started spreading out more than they ever had before, and cities and towns were popping up everywhere. Due to that, the commercial shipping industry had to grow at a rapid pace to deliver food and supplies all over the world. Just like with cars, this contributed to a notable increase in greenhouse gases being emitted into the atmosphere.
So you can probably think, oh, okay, so more cars, more CO2 emissions, and also it means it can boost up greenhouse effect. So probably you might think now, well, more cars, more CO2, more greenhouse effect. Actually, it is kind of bad because Emily mentioned about that several times. But let's go to another place and ask Emily again.
Although scientists identified the impact greenhouse gases could have on our atmosphere all the way back in the 19th century, regular monitoring of atmospheric CO2 only began in the late 1950s. At this time, most people were only concerned about the air pollution that was being generated by transportation and industry, and not about the production of greenhouse gases. Dangerous smog events in the UK and US led to Clean Air Acts being brought in during the 1950s and 1960s. But it wasn't until the 1970s and 1980s that people really started to worry about the production of greenhouse gases, and the first legally binding greenhouse gas reduction targets were not introduced until 1997.
So this is all about greenhouse effect and concerns about air pollution and climate change. It has started since we had starting cars and all these vehicles. So don't forget to take a photos. We can take one more. Okay, there is one more rip. Oh, there is an airplane. Oh, let's take a photo of that.
By the 1950s, air travel was in full swing. It was still expensive, but it was comfortable. Planes were heated, had comfortable seats, and had what would later become flight attendants bringing you food and drinks. Due to this, more people than ever before started flying, which added to the increased CO2 concentrations in our atmosphere.
So we had a problem from cars, trucks, and all this shipping industry. But now we have airplane, so that is another issue. If you never fly with airplane, let's go to inside, like how it looks like. This is not so realistic, but well, there is a seat, there is a window. And there is place for pilots. So we can explore inside of this airplane a little bit. And let's go to another place. More airplanes. But how can it be different from the previous one? Let's ask Emily.
In 1968, Boeing rolled out the first ever jumbo jet. This was able to accommodate 366 passengers and was the first time air travel became affordable for some people who weren't super rich. From that point on, air travel became one of the primary ways people traveled long distances. CO2 emissions have tripled, increased by 3x since then.
So triple means increased by three times.
Air travel currently accounts for around 2.5% of global CO2 emissions and around 12% of the CO2 of the transport sector. It's used to transport people and goods around the world. Depending on the time of day or year, there could be between 8,000 to 20,000 passenger planes in the air at any given moment, and around 35% of high-value goods are currently transported by air. When people take a plane to travel, it's more efficient if the plane is full, as that means there is less CO2 generated per person. But did you know your favorite musician or actor sometimes fly on planes by themselves? Renting private airplanes to fly a single person, or small groups of people, are one of the most inefficient ways to travel. It releases more CO2 and other greenhouse gases per person than any other type of transportation.
So now we have jumbo jets and also private airplane. So it's a little bit different from previous situation. So now we have learned about the age of oil and how we started having cars and trucks and how all the vehicles were populated, and we also learned about airplane, right? So we learned about all these things like CO2 emissions, greenhouse. So what we can do protect our environment. So this area we will learn about alternatives, how we can save our environment by choosing alternatives. So let's go to Emily. And everyone can hear what Emily says, right? Okay.
The first major change in automotive technology was hybrid cars. These use a mix of both fossil fuels and electricity. The car can either be plugged in to charge its small battery, or its combustion engine could be used to charge it while the car is in motion and power it for a short while. These types of cars can be more fuel efficient and emit less greenhouse gases than traditional petrol or diesel automobiles, but they do still rely on fossil fuels for some of their power.
So let's go to another place to learn more about this one.
Many car manufacturers are switching over to 100% electric cars. These cars don't use fossil fuels in their engine and don't produce any greenhouse gases when they're being used. This is a huge step in the right direction and takes us closer than we ever have been to making a sizable impact on the amount of CO2 released into the atmosphere every year by automobiles. Unfortunately, it's not without its own drawbacks. Most power plants that generate the electricity the car needs use fossil fuels to do so, and greenhouse gases are still generated during the car's production. This just moves the issue from the car to the factories and power stations.
So many automobile manufacturers, they declared they're gonna stop producing any gasoline-based vehicles from 2025. So they will start producing only electricity vehicles from 2025. So that's a really huge step, right? So all these vehicles, the new vehicles will not produce any CO2. And there are some hydrogen, the vehicles also, we will go through Emily soon. So this is a good step. But as Emily mentioned, still all this power, the electricity is generated by the traditional power plant. So we will learn more about these power sources with Emily.
To really make a dent in the amount of greenhouse gases we release into the atmosphere every year, we need to find cleaner ways of generating electricity and other forms of energy. Currently, around 2/3, 66%, of all the electricity we generate around the world comes from fossil fuels. Even worse, 85% of all the energy we use, such as heating, transportation, electricity, comes from fossil fuels.
So this looks like some kind of power plant. Let's take a photo of this. And let's learn more about alternative ways to produce power, like electricity. Okay, it looks like some kind of hydropower place, but let's ask Emily.
Research into alternative forms of energy is our best route forward. You might already know of some of them, like solar, wind, and hydropower. These have been three of our major focuses because they are often easily accessible and are completely renewable. Other types of generation are still being researched. Hydrogen gas is a good alternative since instead of releasing CO2 when used, it releases H2O, water. The issue with hydrogen is it still needs fossil fuels to be produced. That's why scientists are working on biohydrogen gas, which uses plants and other organic materials. Tidal energy, energy generated from ocean waves, is another exciting source, but still needs more research before we could use it to generate energy in any type of large quantities.
So we learned a lot of these alternative energy production systems. Let's go outside. Now we can see this old big wind turbine where you can see if you go to the San Francisco area or San Jose area, and there are several big wind turbines there. That is this wind power generators, and also here is the hydropower generator, and also I think this is some kind of like tidal power generator. So let's read this one together. Wind power makes up just 5% to 6% of global electricity production, but has been growing rapidly in recent years and can contribute more than 20% in Western Europe. Solar generation is growing, with some countries like Italy and Chile using solar power to generate nearly 10% of their electricity. Hydropower accounts for around 17% of global electricity production, with most of this being in Southern Africa, Canada, South America, and Northern Europe. And this is solar panels. Solar panels quite popular in California, so probably your school might have one solar panel. I've seen many solar panels in local schools, and also our campus has several big solar panels to generate electricity to emit CO2 less. Let's go to another place. And this is more and more solar panels, right? Big solar panels. Let's go to Emily and let's see here.
There's lots of different future technologies that scientists are researching to help reduce and eliminate our need for fossil fuels. The aim of these technologies is to produce lots of energy efficiently without the need for fossil fuels or other power generation that can release CO2 or other greenhouse gases.
Okay, let's go to this place. Oh, don't forget to take a photo.
Some alternative energy technologies, like offshore wind farms placed in the middle of the ocean, and geothermal, using the heat from molten core of the Earth to generate electricity, are already being developed and installed. Others need a lot more research, but could contribute to getting us to the net zero emissions goal that is necessary to stop climate change, such as nuclear fusion, limitless clean power without producing dangerous nuclear waste, and space-based technologies, like solar panels orbiting the Earth beaming the energy back to the ground. These types of technologies may sound like something out of a science fiction movie, but in order to get to a net zero emissions world, we need to dream big.
That's a very interesting way to generate powers, right? And geothermal, this is pretty popular way to generate electricity, especially in like New Zealand. So when I visited New Zealand, and they have a pretty big like power plant to use geothermal to generate electricity. So if you go there, there is big wind turbine in the middle of ocean. So here you cannot jump into the ocean, but still it is good to take a photo here. And also it seems like it's a geothermal plant or nuclear fusion plant. Okay, we complete area. And now we are going back to our the initial place again. So let's talk to Emily.
Now that you've explored the area and learned about the many problems with transportation, it's time to put it in perspective. Take this book and write about ways we could help address the problem. Use the pictures you took along the way to help illustrate your points. Come see me when you're done.
So now we have one more book. So this book, you can write or type what I learned today is And if you sign here, that is climate change. If you once you sign it, then you can export it. You can use it outside of Minecraft world.
Are you done? We'll need to wait till your entire group is complete before we could move on. In the meantime, you can sign your book by hitting the sign button and then adding a title. Once your book is signed, you could open it up and export it to use outside of Minecraft. Looks like everyone is finished. We'll now teleport to the build challenge. Here you could build your idea of a future mode of transportation that's both clean and easily available to everyone.
So we are going to another place. So here is a place where you can share your ideas to generate clean energy. But this is the end of the module. So if you can access to this Minecraft Education Edition, then you can play by yourself. You can learn about alternative energy or sustainable environment and many other things. Also, you can learn other cool things about math or science or even a computer science. But just we explored about all this alternative energy. But let's talk about other things a little bit more. So all these vehicles, cars, trucks, airplanes, they produce CO2, right? Which is greenhouse gas, and which can increase the global warming. So would it be better to ride on a horse? Do you think it would be better to ride on a horse because it cannot produce any CO2? Yes. Well, when the vehicles like automobile was invented, actually it was a good choice rather than riding on a horse, because horse was not so clean. Horses were not so clean. So let's see, I will show some images. And it is about New York City transit pollution from horses to horseless carriages. So at the time when people used horses for their transportation, the problem was manure. Manure takes methane. So this is all about manure and also the dead horse. So that was a big problem at the time. So how bad was it? Only in 1900s, there were 200,000 horses in New York City. And it means 22 pounds of excrements per horse per day. That is 2,000 tons excrements per day, not to mention around 3,000 gallons of urine. And also the problem was methane. Equine manure emits methane, and methane is produced when horses barf and fart. Methane is more than 25 times as potent as CO2 at trapping heat in the atmosphere. If we keep using horses as our transportation, then it can be worse than using automobiles, because methane is the bigger problem than CO2. So we talked about a smog in 90s and 60s, and we learned about all this air pollution. But was smoke bad in California? Let's see some photos. It is Los Angeles in 60s. And you can see the smoke here is really blurry. We cannot see clear skies. And also we can see people wearing sunglasses and also a handkerchief, because the smoke can make your eyes itch and your throat itch, and also someone wearing a really big mask. So that's why we need to keep our air clean, we need to concern about air pollution, and we need to think about all these clean energies, like alternative energies. So that is lesson 4, today's activity. And any questions? If you have any questions, you can unmute and you can ask questions, or you can type your questions in a chat box. If there is any other questions, I think we can call it a day. Thank you for coming.
Thank you everyone for joining us for celebrating Earth Month. Science Week would not be possible without the dedication of our students, faculty, and staff here at Stan State. Thank you, Dr. Koh.
Thank you so much for watching. Please follow us on social media to find more about our upcoming events.